Peace. What is up, everybody? We are live. Today is August 8th, 2017. That makes it the 8/8 Lionsgate, and I'm super excited to be making a live stream on today. I'm basically going to be using this next bit of time as a time capsule to channel any and all ideas that are coming through me on this day into a space where not only I can see it again in the future, but you can see it again in the future. Other people can discover this video in the future. But right now, I'm making the video on 8/8/2017, otherwise known as August 8th, 2017. And this is the Lion's Gate. And basically this synchronistic celestial event, you might call it, first popped into my life many years ago on my journey. Of course, it happens every single year, but I mean consciously. And let's see, maybe 2013, 2014 maybe, would be around the time where I first started paying attention to this date. But I have a very specific memory of the 8/8 Lionsgate in 2015. And this is when I was playing keyboards for an artist known as Miguel. You've probably heard of him from the song Adorn. He's a really awesome artist. R&B, the ladies will know who he is. So anyways, I was out on tour with Miguel and we were in Atlantic City. And I have this very clear moment where I remember being in my hotel room and I had a window. I was up on like I don't know what floor that would have been, maybe like 8th floor, 8th floor, there you go. Hopefully it was the 8th floor, I don't know. Maybe it was like the 10th floor. I'm way up in the sky, looking out over the city skyline. And I was listening to music. Actually, that's really interesting. I just had this thought right now for the first time. So when I got these headphones, was like the same day or a couple days before, because I was listening to music and I came back across one of my old songs called Orbiting. And this song is just one of my favorite songs that I've written. It comes from an amazing experience that I had in Joshua Tree. That's how that song came to be. That's a fun story. I'll probably tell you that next. But so I was listening to this song that I've written many years ago now called Orbiting. And I'm standing there in the hotel room, Atlantic City. It's 8/8 Lionsgate. And I begin to cry because I feel like I'm just not where I want to be. I'm not exactly doing what I wanted to be doing. I love touring with Miguel, but that was it felt like another symbol of working for other people and not getting to express the art and the creativity that goes on within me. I love that I've been able to work with so many dope artists over the years and still do get to work with so many of them. But there's been like this disconnect in my life of wanting to put my art forward and make a career out of sharing my art and sharing what I'm passionate about versus just being on the sidelines. That's kind of the way it felt, and working for another artist. So there I am in this hotel room listening to Orbiting. It's 8/8 Lionsgate, the exact day, 2015. And I have this overwhelming emotional experience where I just wanted to be closer to my own art as the center of my career. So now, fast forward 1 year later, 8/8 Lionsgate 2016. This story is very interesting. It also includes Miguel, and it includes how that gig finished for me. When I first got the gig with Miguel, which was the beginning of the summer of 2015, I was asked to come on for maybe like 6 months of a tour. And So I wasn't really planning on being there for years. I knew it was going to be a short tour, but it stretched out to be over a year long. And so now here I am on this gig, 8/8 Lionsgate 2016, and I've been doing this gig with Miguel for about the last year and a couple months. And a couple days before this Lionsgate event, I get a phone call. I'm about to be flying out to San Francisco on August 6th to do a performance with Miguel on August 7th. And then I would be flying home from this gig, which was in San Francisco, on August 8th, the Lionsgate. So August 7th is show day. August 6th is the fly day. And on August 5th, I get a phone call from management that lets me know that this will be my last gig with Miguel. So that, that's a whole story in and of itself. Ultimately, it was cool. But yeah, so I get on the plane the next day. I go to San Francisco. I play the show on August 7th. And then on August 8th, I am on a plane by myself flying back to Nashville, which is my new home. And the story of moving to Nashville is also a huge part of this whole experience. But yeah, so that's how the Lionsgate 2015 and 2016 had this very yin-yang, like flip-flop experience for me, where in 2015, I'm on tour with Miguel, standing in a hotel room by myself, looking out over the city, being brought to tears because I wish that I could be putting my art at the center of my career and not pushing that out into the world, but being able to express myself and to be supported for expressing myself. And then you contrast that 1 year later, 2016, and it's synchronistic. Of course, there's no accidents in the universe, but it's synchronistic that then 1 year later, that's when the gig came to an end. And I found myself on an airplane going back to Nashville, which was my brand new home at the time. I've only been here for 1 year. And yeah, so that's a little bit of a story about the transformative power of this Lionsgate experience. It's at the height of summertime, which means that there's a lot of sunlight coming to the planet with ease. That's why first of all, that's why the temperature rises. That's why all of the trees, they blossom throughout the springtime, and in the summertime, they're in full bloom. And in contrast, the wintertime is when the sun is farthest from this hemisphere, and therefore it gets colder and leaves fall and there's not as much growth. That's more of a time of introversion, whereas the summer is the time of extroversion. So the intentions, naturally so, the intentions that you set in the middle of the summertime have extra energy that gets infused into them because it's a very easy time for us to manifest. The sun, the stars, the planet itself are all working together to boost the creative potential of every single human being. And then in the wintertime, it's very much the opposite. The energies are working to force you to look inward and to become more self-aware. That's kind of the purpose for the wintertime, essentially. You have the extroverted season of the summer and the introverted season of the winter. And so the Lionsgate falls in alignment with the summer, and there's excess light energy hitting this part of the planet during the summertime. And yeah, so today, how I wanted to use the Lionsgate today in 2017 is almost just by treating this like a time capsule. While there's many things that are on my mind to talk about, I didn't really start this live stream with one thing in mind to talk about, because it's like this. If you can document what's happening in your life, then any amount of growth that you go on throughout your path, beyond that one day, that one moment and experience, you can continuously reference back to that then and actually measure the growth, measure the evolution that you've been through, if you're able to really capture what's going on in your world and in your mind. So with that being said, another thing that I'm really excited to talk about, and I see you guys that are in the chat room here, thank you for joining. And another thing I wanted to tell you guys is that I am actually just finishing up writing my very first ebook, and this is going to be called How to Speak with Your Creator, or how to speak to the Creator, or how to talk to the Creator. Basically, the book is about prayer and how to pray, why to pray, but it doesn't come at the topic of prayer from the perspective of Christian fundamentalism or like extreme religious thought. This is a book that I've put together specifically designed to help you see the idea of prayer from a much more tangible and real world perspective. Because in my experience, I learned to pray through my Christian upbringing, and I still consider myself to hold true to my Christian faith. Though as I've explored out into the world and I've found yoga and Buddhism, and I've discovered even in my own ancestry, I have Native American in me. So I've discovered through my mom especially, she has educated me a lot on Native American thoughts on spirituality and faith. So even though I was raised with the foundations of Christianity, which I still hold close to me, I have seen, unlike most other Christians, how these other forms of spiritual conversations that I've just noted, like Buddhism, yoga, Native American, they all work together, and I'm not quite sure why Christians can't see that. And that bothers me, because I think that that reveals we have a lot of blockages and limits on how we choose to interact with each other. We put separation between us in the name of love, which is ultimately an inclusive force. So that seems a little hypocritical, and that's why I like to address these topics, to try to call out the hypocritical part of it and offer some clarity on the subject. Because for me, prayer is something that is a daily part of my life. It's not, at this point, it's not something that I sit down to pray and I like do a certain ritual to pray. Prayer, that was how I learned how to pray. And over my years of living, my relationship to my Creator has become more and more internal, more and more daily, more moment by moment. So instead of sitting down in a ritual fashion to pray, I'm constantly in communication with my spiritual source. And that's really the goal of all of these spiritual teachings, is to get you in touch with the spiritual source within. And when you are in touch with that, the idea, the real goal, is to never disconnect yourself from that. So you only spend ritualistic time in prayer when you're learning how to pray, when you really have no idea what prayer is or how to utilize it. It's like practicing an instrument. You've got to spend time in the practice room in order to figure out the instrument itself. But then there comes a point where it's not that you're done learning, but you've learned enough where now you can express from the instrument in a new way, do something totally different, and have an interaction with the instrument itself that has never happened before your unique experience. And that's the exact way it is with God. For the people out there that are unfamiliar with how to speak to God and the Creator, you need something like a ritual of prayer to begin your inner understanding of what that relationship is like. And then over time, the goal is to let go of that ritual and come back to a moment-by-moment connection with your divine source. It's like always having that friend to talk to that's internally, And not only is it a friend, but it is the creator of the universe itself. And so you have no need to worry at that point. You have no need even to desire in the sense of attachment. That's why Buddhism talks about letting go of attachment of desire. Because if you really are understanding and following the train of thought that I'm putting forward, then the next logical step is that if you are in a moment by moment, sentence by sentence, thought by thought connection with the creator of the universe itself, then the moment you have one tiny single need that pops up, it's manifested and already on its way to you. So there's no need at that point to take this little desire that said, oh, I'd like this thing, and turn it into a massive story of how I'm going to get it, how I'm going to force the world to do this for me, or how I'm going to have to dominate that person to get this, or how I'm going to, or worry about the fact that I might not get it, and start getting fearful about the fact that I have this little desire, and now that means that it might never, ever, in all of the universes, ever get fulfilled. And that is a whole lot of storyline that only comes from the ego and is entirely unnecessary. Essentially, the moment the tiniest of desires pops into your internal space, it is already being addressed. It's already being dealt with. And so if you go any farther into that neurotic train of thought I was just describing, you are now discounting your trust in the fact that you are connected to the divine source already. In every single thought, in every single moment, you are connected. So you don't need to try to force it. That's what I'm trying to say. You don't have to try to force the world around you to help you. If you really have positive intentions, there's nothing in the universe that can stop you. Absolutely nothing. If your intentions are even somewhat questionable, then the universe will not help you. Honestly, it's that easy. And yet, what really generates what we might call evil on the planet is the people that then say, okay, well, because the universe is not helping me, I'm going to dominate the rest of the universe. I'm going to dominate as a response and force things to go my way. And that's really the source of evil, because you've fallen out of harmony. Nothing in this universe is here to prevent you from succeeding if your goal is to move forever on the path of love. And what I mean by that, because it sounds almost too mystical in that language, even though that language is totally accurate. What I mean by that is that every choice that you make ultimately is motivated by only one of two forces: love or fear, love or hate. Now, I have to clarify even what I just said, because there are not two forces in the universe. There is not a force of evil, there is only a lack of love. The only thing that actually exists is love. And it is your choice of how much you would like to align with that or deny it. But you cannot create something called evil. I'm definitely speaking in mystical terms. So if I get comments on this stuff, it's to be expected, because what I'm trying to put out there is on the forefront of thought. This train of thought is not for individuals that are hypercritical, because that already shows a disconnect in your own internal trust and source with the creative source of the universe. You see, there's nothing I could possibly tell you. Thanks for the comment. There's nothing I could possibly tell you that hasn't already been told in some form, because this whole universe is set upon rules, not rules, that's the wrong word. This whole universe is already manifested. Everything that has existed or will exist exists in the now. If I don't see it in front of me, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Actually, I just kind of twisted my own thoughts up a little bit. Let me get back to the core of what I'm trying to say. The core of what I'm getting at is that if you are a hypercritical person, that's an external reflection of an internal process of judgment. And judgment is a device of the ego specifically designed to disconnect you from you and your brother, or you and your sister, otherwise known as the human being that you're talking to. Because it doesn't matter who that human being is, they're your brother or your sister in one form. So if you're judging your brother or your sister, then you have lost touch with this beautiful source of all creation that is existing in you and as you, and you're denying your own true nature, which is why, exactly why, your life sucks at that point if you're that person. Because if you deny what you in fact are, then you are splitting yourself in two, and that's exactly what we talk about when it comes to the idea of duality. That's what duality is, how you have split yourself into two. The universe is non-dual, and yet we seem to have a perspective in our intellect that creates duality. A good metaphor for what I just said would be, when you look upon the world, when you're looking at this phone or device, whatever you're watching this video on, you're only seeing one image. You're seeing one reality, one picture. Look away from the screen for a second. Everything you see, it's delivering you one image, one picture. And yet you have two eyes that you're viewing this one picture with. And so those who are lost in the illusion of duality would say that the eyes are fighting with each other, that this eye is pit against this eye, and therefore one of these realities is true and the other one is false. And that's the illusion called duality. The recognition of unity consciousness, or the fact that there is no such thing as duality, is the remembrance that the eyes are not fighting with each other. The eyes are revealing not just the same image, but they reveal depth within the image that you perceive. If you only look through one eye into the world around you, you see a mostly flat image. Likewise, if you look with the other eye, you see a mostly flat image. When you look through both eyes, you see depth. And that's the metaphor for unity consciousness versus duality consciousness. Because duality consciousness would say, one of these eyes is right, one of these eyes is wrong, they're fighting with each other, therefore the world that they reveal, only one world is real and the other world is false. How could that possibly be? You wouldn't even be able to walk down the street if you were constantly trying to figure out which one of your eyes is lying to you. So you have to come back to unity consciousness and remember that both eyes are revealing just one image. There's not two realities going on, there's one. And this eye reveals one image of it and another image, and when they're merged together in perfect harmony, they create depth, which is analogous to deeper understanding, deeper wisdom. You shouldn't look through just one eye, you should look through both. But now, to complete the whole picture of what I was just trying to describe, both of these eyes are showing one observer an image. And you are that observer. You're the thing that's looking through the eyes. And in fact, maybe there's an analogy right here for the Holy Trinity. If we want to continue the idea that there's one reality with one eye and another reality with another eye, and you are the observer that's looking through both, that could be analogous to the Holy Trinity. And you, the divine soul, is the thing that is looking through the lenses. So on that note, actually, I want to read you a little bit of the book that I've been writing. If you just tuned in to the live stream, what I was telling you a little bit ago is that I'm working on a new book called How to Speak with Your Creator, or How to Speak to the Creator. And there's a part of this book, here you go, check it out. Chapter 1, can you see it? Spirituality is not intellectualism. That's the very first chapter. I want to read you this part on the eyes and on judgment, because I actually wrote what I was just describing, I wrote in my new book. But before I read that, I want to read you the very first paragraph, this short one and this paragraph from the book. This is how the book starts. Spirituality is not intellectualism. Truth is simple. If you are confused in any way, then you haven't perceived the whole truth. This is an important idea. Spirituality can be intellectualized and symbolized, but it is not either of those things at its core. Spirituality is your nature. It is not something that you practice. It is something that you are, always. There is no becoming spiritual. All there is becoming less egotistic. Choosing to be less narcissistic. Choosing to think less about others. Choosing to think about others. Choosing to put others' concerns at a high value and, when appropriate, higher than your own. Spirituality is not a practice for the intellect. It is an expression of the soul, your real self. So that's how the book starts, just to set the tone. Now let me search for this part about judgment. I think it's under, let me search actually for the eyes. Let's see. It's pretty cool that I can just go through my own ebook and search for the stuff that I was wanting to tell you guys. I'm excited to put this out there. This has been something that I've wanted to do for a long time, write this ebook. Okay, I'm going to read you these 4 paragraphs, and this is from a subchapter called The Beautiful Paradox. So this is in chapter 1, and this is one of the subchapters of chapter 1. It is called The Beautiful Paradox. Here we go. This is what I call the beautiful paradox, the realization we are both eternal and temporary. It is the paradox of being human and God at the same time, matter and spirit. It is the paradox of simultaneously being a small piece of the whole and the totality of the whole. All of this is true and not dual. However, the ego brain doesn't know what to do with these paradoxes. When the mind cannot make sense of something, it begins to fear it. I invite you to replace your fear with love and embrace this beautiful paradox. We will explore many paradoxes throughout this book. Each one holds a deeper truth if you can learn to perceive beyond them. For example, a coin has 2 sides and yet it is only one coin. The truth of the object is that it is one object, and yet we perceive it to have 2 faces. And so it is with the beautiful paradox. When we cannot reconcile the paradox, then we forget that it is only one object, one truth. There isn't a war between these 2 sides either. And what I'm talking about previously is the 2 sides of your brain. So there isn't a war between these 2 sides either. The left brain is not at war with the right brain. The right and left work together to perceive the whole. Your left eye and right eye reveal only one image. The advantage of having two eyes instead of one is that you perceive depth. And so it is when we approach these deeper truths. Viewed through one eye only, there is a lack of depth. Viewed through both, depth is revealed. The right eye doesn't fight the left eye, instead they work together to reveal the deeper truths in front of you. With that being said, we have reached another paradox. There is a war going on in your mind. If you experience mental suffering, then what has happened is that these two sides have been pitted against each other instead of working together. Quite literally, mental suffering comes from the fact that you have turned against yourself. But how could this be? Why would we end up like this? So, there you have it, a little subsection from the book that's titled The Beautiful Paradox. And as we were just discussing, when you look at reality and start to understand its wholeness, how everything is connected, instead of looking at the two sides of things and thinking that they're fighting, if you can see how both sides of things work together in harmony to reveal a deeper truth, then you'll be able to elevate your mind to see the unity that is around you. Step outside of duality. Like I just said in the chapter, duality consciousness is like your two eyes fighting with each other. This one claiming that its version of reality is the correct and only version of reality. And then this one claiming that its version and image of reality is the only correct version of reality. And then now they seem to be at war with each other. This is a very clear example of how idiotic that would actually be to live that way. So why do we think it's any different when it comes to the idea of God and when it comes to the idea of love? Love does not have an opposite. There's no such thing as evil. There is only love and the lack of love. When we talk about the Force, like Star Wars, right? The Force. When we talk about the Force, we're talking about one force. You can use it in a positive sense, and we would call that the good side, the Jedi, the light, and you can use it in a negative sense, and we call that the dark side, or Darth Vader. But there's only one force. The Force itself is not good or evil. The Force just is. And then you are undergoing the experience of duality. You are the thing that's actually undergoing the experience of good and evil. It's you that's actually making the choice of which reality you're going to perceive. And if you choose to perceive the Force, which is love in my analogy here, if you choose to see it through a negative lens, then you do take the path of the dark side, and you start to see how separated things are, and you start to fight with yourself internally about every single subject. You start to push people away, you start to isolate yourself, and then when you become totally isolated, you then start to mull over, why am I isolated? That turns into anger and jealousy and hatred and bitterness, resentment. And then once you get there, that then turns into fear of genuine people, because you only think that negative people exist. And so you've created this whole picture in your mind that pushes out any help you could possibly get from any positive person. And instead, what you're now going to do is you're going to dominate everybody. That's your only option. And that sucks. That sucks. That can only end with the three-dimensional mirror reality that we're living in dominating you as a response. If you, whatever you put forth in this universe comes back to you multiplied. That's also another chapter. Maybe I'll read that next. I wrote another chapter in my ebook that is basically talking about the law of karma. And people often think that the law of karma is only negative, and that's only because if you're a negative person, What you put out comes back to you. That's the real law of karma. What you put out comes back to you multiplied. That's the law of karma. And so if you put out negativity, even in a passive sense, it will be multiplied when it comes back to you. So you'll be able to know, hey, you're putting out negativity. And the same is true for positivity. If you put out positive, it comes back to you multiplied. So that's why you can't say that karma is negative. Karma is just it's a bounce back. It's like, okay, another good analogy would be like, so the mirror, it's not the mirror's fault for how you look. You can't look at a mirror and be upset with the reflection and say, well, it's this mirror. Screw this mirror. I'm gonna break it, I'm gonna go get another one. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Two sides of the brain. Spirituality is not intellectualism. Then we get into the two wolves. The two wolves is a Native American story. Have you guys heard that one? It's a really, really great story. I'll read just the one paragraph of this two wolves story. Okay, here we go. A fight is going on inside me, grandfather said, teaching his grandson about life. It is a vicious fight between two wolves. One is evil. This wolf is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, and ego. Grandfather continued, the other wolf is good. It is joy, peace, love, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same fight is going on within you and within every other person too. The young boy thought about what was said for a moment and then responded, which wolf will win? Grandfather replied, the one you feed. And that is so true. I think most of you have probably heard that story by now, but it sets up perfectly the story of Cain and Abel. I don't know if you're familiar with the story of Cain and Abel. It's an old Bible story. In fact, it's the second story told in the Bible after the story of creation. The second story is the story of Cain and Abel, which is the story of two brothers. And the story, well, I'm not going to get into that for now. Unless you guys leave a comment and you want me to dive into it. I'm not going to dive into the story of Cain and Abel right now because I wrote a whole chapter on it. It's like a 8-page chapter because it's a very thick subject. It's got a lot of lessons to glean from it. But to summarize, the Cain and Abel story is basically the same parable as the two wolves. And Cain is one side of your mind, one side of your brain, and Abel is another side of your brain. And in the same way that grandfather says the one that wins is the one that you feed, the same is true about the Cain and Abel story. There's a part of you that is incredibly vicious, and then there's a part of you that is incredibly beautiful and knows how to harmonize and knows how to love. And the side of you that becomes dominant in your life is the side that you feed, to use the wolf analogy. The side that you let live. And there we go again. It all comes down to choice. It comes down to your choices. And in fact, this is where the tangent began, however many minutes ago that was. The tangent began with the idea that your choices matter, and your choices are motivated by only one of two things. Either they're motivated by love or they're motivated by fear. And fear is an illusion, whereas love is the only reality that actually exists. So that's why it's a very easy bit of advice to give, which is step outside of your fear. Do not allow your fear to block you from moving forward in any avenue of your life. I was talking with one of my good friends named Tyler, and Tyler, if you ever watch this video, what up, dude? I was talking with Tyler a long time ago about the idea of fear and courage, and the word courage became the center of our conversation. And we got onto the subject that basically fear exists, and there's nothing you can do about that. You can't erase your fear. If you have a situation that you're fearful of, you can't just erase that fear. It's a very real thing. This is where the word courage comes in. The word courage literally means to move forward in the face of fear. So fear can only be dominated by courage, but it's not that being courageous means that you are not fearful. Being courageous actually means that you are scared shitless, and yet you're not going to let that stop you. You're not going to let it keep you from going forward along your path. Perfect example. As a dude, especially throughout my 20s, approaching women, especially when I thought they were attractive, used to be the most difficult thing for me. And it's not like I'm some kind of ladies' man or something now where it's ridiculously easy. I'm just saying that a long time ago, I used to have very intense insecurities that would prevent me from even going across the room to say hello to somebody that I found attractive. I was so afraid, and the fear is what kept me paralyzed, locked into my one time-space reality. So how, over the years, how did I get over my fear of approaching women? I simply got over it by every single time I became fearful. At a certain point, I just had to decide to move my legs and walk over to that person. So it's not that the fear left, it's that I decided to tell my legs to move even though I was scared shitless. That's the truth of the situation at hand. And that never really subsided. Every time I'd find myself in that same situation, there would still be a fear, and I would just choose once again to move forward, because there was thousands of times that I never did, thousands. And this is just a metaphor as well. So, you know, think of it in another example. Let's say in my musical life, I remember being 18-ish years old, and my dad and I went to go see a Broadway play up in Portland, Oregon, right before I moved to Los Angeles. This was like a year before I moved. Maybe I was 17. And we went to go see the Broadway play Rent. If you've ever seen that show, you know it's a good time. And this was like a touring Broadway production of it, so super slamming talent at an amazing theater, huge, probably seats like 2,000 people. And for this show, they actually keep the band on stage so you can visibly see them throughout the show. And my dad and I, we have this ritual. When we would go see Broadway performances, he would always take me down to go look at the pit and look at all the different instruments. That's why I do this for a living, because I grew up in a musical family, and it's such a beautiful memory. I really cherish my youth. So anyways, my dad and I were up there looking at the band, which is actually on stage, and there's all the musicians are just chilling right there, and I get this desire that starts burning in me, where I'm like, man, I want to do what they are doing. They are embodying the exact thing that I want to embody, which is being a traveling musician. And if you have ever had a desire this intense, you know the feeling I'm talking about. It's just like an irk from the inside of your core. It's like every part of me is just like, I gotta do that. I have to do that. I want to do that. So I started expressing to my dad that I'm feeling this irk. I'm like, man, how did he get there? Like, how do I get there? I want to do that. And he said, why don't you just ask him to come over here and talk to us? And I was like, I can't just ask him to come over here and talk to us. He's standing on, this is like a Broadway thing. And my dad, being the wise person he is, understands how human beings work, and he's like, he wouldn't let up on me. So he said, I'll give you $5 that if you say his name right now, because we could read his name in the brochure. If you say his name and you ask him if he'll come over here and talk to us, I'll give you $5. I don't know, my dad, by the way, I still don't think he's ever given me $5, but it's because his point was proven. I shouted his name. His name was Dave Papin, so I shouted the name Dave. Dave, the keyboard player, turned around and he looked at me, this young 17-year-old dude standing at the edge of the stage. You can only see my head, I'm sure. And he looked at me and I just said, "Hey, can I ask you a question?" And basically he said, "Sure." And he came down, he came right to the edge of the stage, and I just presented the only first question I could possibly think of. I hadn't really thought of a follow-up question to the question of, "Can I ask you a question?" And I just asked him, "How did you get to where you are? I'm a young musician. I'm about to be moving to LA to go to music school. I want to do what you're doing. You know, how can I do that?" And he gave me a very short answer, but then what happened next is amazing. He said, "Listen, I don't have a lot of time to talk right now, but meet me around back after the show at the backstage door. I'll come out there and we'll chat a little bit more." So that was exciting. And after the show, the show was amazing, by the way. We left, went around to the backstage door. We found him, and he came out and talked to us, and seriously talked to us for probably like half hour, 40 minutes. And then that is not where the story ends. He gave me his email address and he said, "Look, we're going to be doing another show in a city about an hour from here. We're going to be doing a show there in about 2 months. So here's my email. When we come back through town, I'll get you tickets and you can come see that show. I'll give you a tour of the backstage and all that kind of stuff." And I was like, my little freaking 17-year-old brain just melted out through my nose. I was so excited. So sure enough, 2 months goes by. I've emailed him. We've set up this whole hang. And we get down there and he says, "Okay, look, tell your dad to go to the box office. There's tickets there waiting for him. You are going to meet me at the backstage door of the new theater." And I was like, okay. So he had arranged this whole thing for me to sit on stage next to the secondary keyboard player who's playing B3, to sit on stage for the entire show of Rent, of this Broadway touring theater. And yeah, by the way, Dave Papin, if you ever see this video, you don't even know how much you've changed my life. I've told this story thousands of times over the last 14 years or 15 years of my life, however long it's been. And seriously, this is just such an amazing experience that I got to sit on stage, and it just showed me the generosity of people, the power of asking questions, the power of stepping outside of your comfort zone, and how you never know how life will respond to you. If you stand in your fear, you will never put yourself forward. Courage is not that your fear somehow disappears and you act now because you feel good. Courage doesn't work like that. Courage is the action of doing what you know you need to do in the face of fear, and not allowing fear to cripple you to the point where you become stuck. And so I invite you, in closing, we're going to wrap up the live stream. I invite you to be courageous about the next phase of your life. We're in the peak of the light season, and after this date, first of all, we've passed the summer solstice, so technically we're already on our way back to winter. But especially by the time we get to Halloween and then we get to November and December, we'll be in a completely different season than we are right now. And so it's important, while we're in this season where the light is abundant and where the energy is flowing freely, to set intentions that will lead you out beyond your comfort zone. Set intentions that are wild. You never know what will happen. You never know. Don't set intentions, or don't limit your intentions based on your fear. I just totally did this whole finger thing. I saw that. Don't think I didn't see that. I saw that happen. But yeah, set your intentions And don't let fear limit you, because fear will limit your potential, and you came here to expand your wings as far and as wide as possible. Don't allow your fear to prevent you from doing that. One of my biggest fears is the judgment of other people. As an empath and a spiritually sensitive person, I feel people's judgment. That's the easiest way I could say it without getting onto a long rant. I feel it as an emotion in my body. When somebody is judging me, I can feel it. It's not just a observation or I'm like aloof to it, like, oh, they were judging me. No, I feel it every time it cuts, because it's real. It's a form of energy. And when somebody puts judgment forth, it is received. It doesn't have to be interpreted, like I don't have to hold on to it, but it will exist. It will have been manifest, and I will have perceived it. I will have to have dealt with it. And yeah, so fear has a way of keeping me then from doing what I love to do, which is share the spiritual knowledge that I came here to share. I am not going to get through this lifetime and let my fear of other people's judgment prevent me from putting forth what I came here to put forth, which is all of this. So for the few of you that joined me here on the live stream, I want to say a big thank you for watching, especially a couple of you that have watched this whole time. Seriously, thank you for tuning in. And if you have any questions, leave it in a comment. As always, you can find how to contact me on my website, which is IamOnenO.com. I've got a Patreon up, which is patreon.com/IamOnenO. I release all of my music there. I also have my 21-day meditation program up there. And very soon, in maybe like the next month, I'm hoping it gets out very soon, I'm going to be releasing my very first ebook. And we were reading from that today. It's going to be titled How to Speak to the Creator, or How to Talk with the Creator. I'm still working out the exact title, but keep an eye out for that. And thanks again for tuning in. So happy Lionsgate, everybody. Share the video with a friend if you liked it. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. And until I see you again, oneness in sound, I am OnenO. Mwah. Peace out, y'all.